In late October 2025, I remember sitting in my apartment eating breakfast at around 6 a.m. when I got a message on my phone telling me to check my email for an update about my role at Amazon. I knew that this was probably going to be a layoff, and once I went and read that email, it was exactly that. It was a layoff. Now, in all honesty, within the first 30 to 60 seconds of seeing that layoff language, my mind kind of rushed between a lot of different thoughts, both feelings of anxiety, feelings of stress, but also feelings of relief. And I realized right then and there that my life, which had been consumed by Amazon for 3.5 years, was coming to an end, and I was not prepared mentally for what lied ahead. Hi, my name is Brandon, and I am now a ex-data scientist from Amazon, and welcome to my channel. Today, I just want to talk a little bit about my experience having been laid off at Amazon nearly 5 to 6 months ago, and what I've learned during this entire time that I've not been working. So, to be honest, I worked at Amazon for 3.5 years, and that was a lot longer than the 6 months that I thought I was going to make it when I first joined, because I had heard of all the horror stories of how difficult it was to work in Amazon corporate, how there were constant layoffs, lots of fighting between coworkers, and a really brutal performance review process, which would just leave you feeling demotivated every single day when you're just wondering, is my work good enough to keep me here? I prepared quite a lot in order to get this job at Amazon. I was doing flashcards of statistics trivia and product sense. I was doing a bunch of SQL questions on HackerRank and a few other websites. I was going through and doing a lot of book problems, just trying to make sure that I could remember basic statistics concepts on the fly. And when I finally interviewed at Amazon in July of 2022, I ended up interviewing with 6 different people, all of whom had different PhDs in machine learning, statistics, computer science, and it was a very grueling process. So when I finally learned that I had gotten an offer, I really felt I had earned this. I felt that the job that I had was prestigious, and I got a lot of perks, not just including the pay, that I never experienced at any of my previous jobs. But the more I worked at Amazon, the more I came to realize that I couldn't afford to lose this job. My mindset shifted from one of relief to one of constant self-preservation and trying to make sure that I did nothing that could cause me to lose my job. During my 3.5 years at Amazon, I had 11 managers. Hear that again, 11 managers. Most of my managers didn't even last 3 months, where they either got moved to a different team, left the company, got fired, anything you can imagine, it happened to them. I think when I finally left Amazon, that was my longest manager to date at 8 months, which is kind of crazy. That meant that every single performance review, it was a different manager. That meant that there were constantly shifting expectations on what was expected of my role, what it meant to succeed in my role, and what even the focus was of science in my org for the next 6 months. This caused me to fall into this trap of a people-pleasing loop. I could never say no to my new manager. I was constantly trying to perform and prove to them that I was on their side. I was constantly trying to do different projects, regardless of if I thought they had business value, because I felt that my manager that I have now, I need to get them invested in order to get myself promoted. I even at points was not even eating or sleeping very well because I was told you need to get these projects out on a very quick deadline, especially if you want to be up for promotion. I thought that I could be a quote outlier who could succeed and actually do well in this system despite the constant turnover. Because as I was told at Amazon, it's always day one. That's not an excuse for why you are not able to persevere and do well in your role. In many ways, I took advantage of my role at Amazon. I was saving $80,000 to $100,000 a year into my emergency savings and being able to live a nice life in New York City. But even though I was meeting all these financial targets, I still felt I cannot afford to lose this. If I lose this, what will I do? How will I survive here? That money did not give me any more sense of security in my mind versus the numbers in my bank account saying you have more than a year that you could not need to work and just live off your savings. And I realized over time that I was optimizing, quote, the loss function for safety and not instead for fulfillment, happiness, or thinking that I'm actually working towards the goals I set for myself. I learned firsthand that financial realities and what my bank account says or what my investments say doesn't translate into mental stability. Just because I think that I have all this money sitting in a bank account for a rainy day doesn't mean that I feel any less comfortable with the idea of being laid off or even finding a new job or having to deal with new types of managers. That amount of money did not really change my mindset, to be honest. And after being laid off from Amazon, I felt in some ways some relief. No longer would I have to go through and deal with these constant performance reviews, manager churn, shifting priorities, different coworkers leaving every couple of months. I could finally say I'm out of here without having to make that choice on my own, which I could never bring myself to do, to quit my job voluntarily. But then after being laid off, I spent the next couple of months really working through those feelings of believing that, can I get another job like this? what am I going to do? The market is difficult. And those thoughts really consumed me until I could think of a different perspective. And what I ultimately decided to do was that I would have to go back and rework through my mindset of how I view a layoff in general, and even my view on what it meant to work in tech. I kind of coined this period as kind of a sovereignty tax, where I am essentially going through and using my savings to not necessarily buy me time to find a new job, though that's definitely helping, but also to go through and hopefully undo 32 years of bad mental conditioning, so that way I can actually be more resilient going forward. And even more than that, to kind of take the time to think, if I can step away from looking at this kind of job as I needed to have it because it was prestigious, it paid a lot, and I think people really wanted it, and people would really assume good things about me because I had a job like this, to instead focus on, what do I really want? Am I a data scientist because I actually want to be a data scientist? Or am I a data scientist just because I thought this pays a lot of money, therefore I'm going to do it? I learned through this time of self-reflection that my work has value if I believe it has value. Not just because my manager says, sorry, this isn't what I envision is necessary to succeed in this role. My work has value if I believe it has value. I learned that all these external events like layoffs, performance reviews, or whatnot, don't have to really affect me internally if I feel that I am managing the best that I can in these situations. I should not have to feel that if I can't spend all night to do the best possible work for a particular project, that somehow means that I'm not good enough to deliver on this project given a certain time constraint. And that really what matters is, am I happy with the effort that I've put in? And regardless of the outcome, as long as I'm happy with that effort, that is what matters. And that at the root of all of this, I need to optimize for my own agency and control over where my life is going, rather than optimizing for the safety of my job. And in this case, optimizing for the safety of trying to stay within Amazon, because the idea of leaving Amazon to the unknown was scarier than having to deal with all these performance reviews and all of these really stressful manager churn situations that constantly revolved me feeling like I was having a pants on fire moment every single day I went to work. So as of now, it is May of 2026. I have over a year of runway to be able to not work, which is a very privileged situation, but in some ways, I lost a lot of my mental health at Amazon in order to get to this position. So now I will spend the next couple of months to really think, what am I looking to do with my career? What do I actually want to do? How can I move slowly towards figuring that out and going after it in a way that I no longer feel tied down by my job at Amazon? And while this period is going to be very uncertain, I'm going to make a lot of mistakes as I go along the way, I know now that that uncertainty and the burn that I'm going to feel as that the clock is ticking down on my savings, in some ways could yield so much more growth for my personal self than 3.5 years of being safe at Amazon led me to actually develop. So as I go along and explore my interests over the next couple of months, I'm going to really ask myself, what am I looking to do? What kind of impact am I hoping it to have? And what kind of skills do I actually want to learn? And to try to use that as my guiding star, at least initially, rather than just optimizing for prestige and salary, which, don't get me wrong, salary is definitely important in this day and age when things are expensive, but that salary does not necessarily guarantee that you will be happy in the end.